The Blackwater Massacre. This pivotal moment is what kicks off the entire Red Dead Redemption universe. Yet, in games, we're given so very little details about what happened. Today at the Cantina, we're going to take what details we do get and try and piece together what happened. The town of Blackwater. Starting out as a little more in the trading post, the capital of West Elizabeth would find itself growing at a steady rate due to the lumber and coal industries in the area. It's important to note, though, that Blackwater in 1899 is not the established town that we see when playing as John in Red Dead 1 or 2. In fact, it's still up and coming, and we'd probably see more lawmen that we would see in more of the rural areas versus the police officers that we would see in Saint Denis or later in Blackwater. Now, on that fateful day, it was not just the lawmen of Blackwater protecting the town from the Vanderlyn gang, but also a group known as the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Inspired by the real-life organization with the same name, the Pinkertons that we see in Red Dead Redemption are tasked with wiping out the last of the outlaw gangs, and in this pursuit they are ruthless and effective. Now, how they go about accomplishing this is via bounty hunters, internal sabotage, or even brute force when necessary. The gang that the Pinkertons were hunting that day was the infamous Vanderlyn gang, a group of ruthless outlaws that had been active for over 20 years. And to fully explain their story, well, I'll have to cover that in another video. That day, though, was going to be the first of two heists that the gang had planned over the next couple days. The first job was going to be stealing bank money off a ferry, equaling out to $150,000. That's $4,704,000 in today's currency. The second job is described to us in Arthur's journal. He calls it robbing from crooks. He and Hosea were somehow going to steal money from a couple of cons running a real estate job and then meet up with the rest of the gang the day after. However, they never make it that far. Now, one morning in May 1899, Dutch, Micah, Bill, Javier, John, Sean, Mac, and Davy descended on the town of Blackwater in order to pull the ferry job. Javier would later describe to Arthur how at first everything was going real well. Was until they got to the money. Once they got to the money, the boat was surrounded by Pinkertons and lawmen. Now, at this point in the story, details get fuzzy on what actually happens. But what all accounts can agree on is the tragic death of Heidi McCord, an innocent civilian that happened to be on the ferry that day. She was shot in the back of the head by Dutch Vanderlyn, for no particular reason by most accounts. However, we learned from John and Javier's perspective that Dutch said that he had done it for the gang to ensure their survival. Javier and John still didn't fully understand why, but what John did know is he'd never be able to unsee her lifeless corpse. Now, the Pinkertons would have been successful in their mission that day had Arthur and Hosea not gotten word of the gang's troubles. So, they came in to save their comrades in arms, punching a hole in the line of the Pinkertons and lawmen. This created an opportunity for those on the ferry to escape. The Blackwater Massacre would go down as one of the most notable gunfights at the end of the Old West. This due to the scale of it, the gruesome death of Heidi McCord, and how against all odds, the amount of money that was stolen. Yeah, you heard me right. The Vanderlyn gang was successful in stealing the money despite it all. It was during the escape that Dutch and Hosea would take the time to stash the money in a safe box in Blackwater while the rest of the gang packed up camp. Now, it's during the escape that Jenny, a girl that had been with the Vanderlyn gang for a little while, would get fatally shot, and Davy would take a bullet to the gut that would lead to his eventual demise that we see at the beginning of Red Dead 2. After the shootout, we'd see the town of Blackwater go into a martial law enforced by the Pinkertons. It was also during this time that we'd see two major improvements happen to the town. The first change being the transition from having lawmen to policemen. This more organized police force would being an effort to make sure such atrocities didn't happen again. The second, strangely enough, was the continued growth of Blackwater. We also see a growth in town population after the massacre. This is due to the still increasing lumber and coal industries in the area, but also due to a large number of people wanting to see where the famous shootout had taken place. Another outcome of the massacre was the legend of Landon Ricketts. Now, in game, any newspaper that mentions him will mention the fact that he was there. However, I believe that there's a chance he may have not actually been there, because everyone that we know for a fact that was there, such as members of the gang, never mention having seen the outlaw be there, even though in Red Dead 1, whenever John lays eyes on him, he immediately knows the person. Rockstar even acknowledges that print back then wasn't the most accurate. In a side quest for Red Dead 2, you have to hunt down all of these legendary outlaws, and at the very end of that story arc, it turns out that this kid, who is a famed gunslinger, was actually no more than just a great opportunist. And the man that was writing the book over him, even though he had just seen him shoot a man in the back, he says instead he'll write it as the two men fought honorably, and in the end the outlaw won, but he didn't survive the fight, and he expected great sales from it. Of course, another theory is that maybe Landon Ricketts was there, and just no one of the gang saw him or lived to tell the tale. What I'm speaking of specifically is early in the game, Arthur runs into the Pinkertons and he asks what happened to Matt Gallagher, thinking that the Pinkertons have him under arrest. But they explain that they had found Matt Callender bleeding out in an alley, and that after they interrogated him and realized he had no useful information for him, they did a mercy killing of him. Could Mac have been shot up by no one other than Landon Ricketts? We may never know. What we do know is that the Pinkertons could only describe the Blackwater Massacre as a complete, total, and terrible defeat. Not only had they failed to wipe out the Vanderlyn gang that day, but also they had let the money get away as well. The Vanderlyn gang would escape up north to a mining town named Coulter, and while they had been successful that day in heisting the money from the ferry, they'd soon find out that their troubles were only just beginning. We want to thank you for joining us here at the Cantina today. We hope you enjoyed our story and will come back again and hear some more. Have a good day.